Gross structure of the brain. Nervous system: SNES, central nervous system, PNS, brain, spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nerve. Ganglion, central nervous system, brain. Gross divisions of the brain. Cerebrum. Cerebral hemisphere. Diencephalon. Cerebellum. Brainstem. Embryonic, developmental, divisions of the brain. Telencephalon. Cerebral cortex. Cerebral white matter. Basal ganglia. Metencephalon. Cerebellum. Pons. Primary vesicle. Secondary vesicle. Derivatives. Prosencephalon. Diencephalon. Thalamus. Hypothalamus. Subthalamus. Epithalamus. Mesencephalon. Mesencephalon. Midbrain. Rhombencephalon. Myelencephalon. Medulla oblongata. Development. Brainstem. Basic structure of brainstem: 1. Roof plate. 2. Tegmentum. 3. Basal portion. Bacilla, basal, portion. Descending fibers from cerebral cortex. 1. Corticospinal tract. 2. Corticobulbar tract. 3. Corticopontocerebellar fiber. Corticopontine fiber. Pons proper, ventral pons. Pontocerebellar fiber. Pyramidal tract. Roof plate: midbrain, superior colliculus, vision, closed medulla. Inferior colliculus, hearing. Closed medulla. Nucleus gracilis et cuneatus. Discriminative touch sensation. Cerebellum, equilibrium. Tegmentum, cranial nerve nuclei, procerebellar nuclei. Reticular formation. Tracts. Ascending cortical pathway. Cerebellar circuits. Descending tract. Composite bundle, cranial nerves, columns of brainstem: motor column 1, GSE2, SVE3, GVE. Sensory column 4, VA, GVA and SVA. 5, GSA. 6, SSA. Components of cranial nerves. Ventricles in brainstem. Mesencephalon, cerebral aqueduct. Metencephalon, fourth ventricle. Myelencephalon, fourth ventricle. Vermes. Occipital lobe. Thalamus. Corpus callosum. Hypothalamus. Fornix. Anterior commissure. Optic nerve. Fourth ventricle. Posterior commissure. Pyramid. Mammillary body. Quadrigeminal cistern. Anterior view of brainstem. Internal capsule. Basal ganglia. Optic nerve. Optic tract. Hypothalamus. Mammillary body. Cerebral peduncle. Interpeduncular fossa. Flocculus. Inferior olivary nuclear complex. Cerebellum. Cerebellar tonsil. Pyramid. Pyramidal decussation. Pons. Optic chiasm. Lateral view of brainstem. Optic tract. Optic nerve. Hypothalamus. Optic chiasm. Middle cerebellar peduncle. Trigeminal nerve. Vestibular cochlear nerve. Flocculus. Cuneate tubercle. Inferior olivary nuclear complex. Anterior median fissure. Pyramid. Pons. Cerebral. Peduncle. Posterior view of brainstem. Superior colliculus. Cerebral peduncle. Inferior colliculus. Superior cerebellar peduncle. Fourth ventricle. Middle cerebellar peduncle. Inferior cerebellar peduncle. Medulla. Components of the brainstem. Sensory ascending pathways, dorsal. Relay nuclei, tracts. Motor descending pathways, ventral. Tracts, motor nuclei, brainstem. Cerebellar pathways. Tracts, cerebellar afferent and efferent nuclei. Cranial nerve sensory and motor tracts. Cranial nerve nuclei, nerve entry and exit points. CPGs, rhythmic chewing, respiration, cardiovascular regulation and gain adjustments for reflexes. Modulatory systems, locus coeruleus, raphe and substantia nigra. Chemically coded nuclei. Brainstem located BTWN, the cerebrum and the SC. Provides a pathway for tracts running BTWN higher and lower neural centers. Consists of the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Each region is about an inch in length. Microscopically, it consists of deep gray matter surrounded by white matter fiber tracts. Produce automatic behaviors necessary for survival. Brainstem, 3 major divisions. Midbrain. Pons. Medulla. Midbrain located BTWN, diencephalon and pons. 2 bulging cerebral peduncles on the ventral side. These contain descending fibers that go to the cerebellum via the pons. Descending pyramidal tracts. Running through the midbrain is the hollow cerebral aqueduct which connects the 3rd and 4th ventricles of the brain. The roof of the aqueduct, the tectum, contains the corpora quadrigemina. 2 superior colliculi that control reflex movements of the eyes, head and neck in response to visual stimuli. 2 inferior colliculi that control reflex movements of the head, neck, and trunk in response to auditory stimuli. Midbrain. Cranial nerves 3 and 4, oculomotor and trochlear, exit from the midbrain. Midbrain also contains the headquarters of the reticular activating system. Midbrain. On each side, the midbrain contains a red nucleus and a substantia nigra. Red nucleus contains numerous blood vessels and receives info from the cerebrum and cerebellum and issues subconscious motor commands concerned with muscle tone and posture. Lateral to the red nucleus is the melanin-containing substantia nigra which secretes dopamine to inhibit the excitatory neurons of the basal nuclei. Damage to the substantia nigra would cause what? Pons literally means bridge-wedged BTWN. The midbrain and medulla contains sensory and motor nuclei for 4 cranial nerves. Trigeminal, 5, abducens, 6, facial, 7, and auditory/vestibular, 8. Respiratory nuclei. Apneistic and pneumotaxic centers work with the medulla to maintain respiratory rhythm. Nuclei and tracts that process and relay info to/ from the cerebellum. Ascending, descending, and transverse tracts that interconnect other portions of the SNES, medulla oblongata, most inferior region of the brainstem. Becomes the spinal cord at the level of the foramen magnum. Ventrally, 2 ridges, the medullary pyramids, are visible. These are formed by the large motor corticospinal tracts. Right above the medulla-SC junction, most of these fibers cross over, decussate. Medulla oblongata. Nuclei and the medulla are associated with autonomic control, cranial nerves, and motor/sensory relay. Autonomic nuclei. Cardiovascular centers. Alter the rate and force of cardiac contractions. Alter the tone of vascular smooth muscle. Respiratory rhythmicity centers. Receive input from the pons. Additional centers. Emesis, deglutition, coughing, hiccuping, and sneezing. Medulla oblongata sensory and motor nuclei of 5 cranial nerves. Auditory/vestibular, 8, glossopharyngeal, 9, vagus, 10, accessory, 11, and hypoglossal, 12. Relay nuclei. Nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus pass somatic sensory information to the thalamus. Olivary nuclei relay info from the spinal cord, cerebral cortex, and the brainstem to the cerebellar cortex, ascending sensory pathways. Fine discriminative touch, conscious proprioception. Fasciculus gracilis terminates in the nucleus gracilis, medulla. Fasciculus cuneatus terminates, medulla, in the cuneate and accessory cuneate nuclei. Sensations of pain and temperature. Lateral spinothalamic tract. Origin dorsal horn cells of the gray matter. Fibers cross contralaterally through the anterior commissure and ascend to the VPL nucleus. Transmits sensations of touch. Ventral spinothalamic tract. Origin cells of the posterior horn. Fibers cross to the opposite side in the anterior commissure. Descending motor pathways. Voluntary movement. Lateral corticospinal tract. Originates in large pyramidal cells, precentral gyrus. Cross to the opposite side of the cord at the pyramidal decussation and terminate in the dorsal horn cells. Ventral corticospinal tract. Originates in the pyramidal cells, motor area of the cortex. Impulses related to equilibrium and anti-gravity reflexes. Vestibulospinal tract. Fibers originate in the vestibular nuclei of the medulla and terminate at level of the sacral spinal nerves. Connects vestibular complex and head and eye movement coordination center in medulla. Medial longitudinal fasciculus. Contains both ascending and descending fibers. Motor hierarchy lateral group, extremities, fine motor control. Corticospinal tract. Rubrospinal tract. Medial group, axial musculature, rhythmic and postural movements. Vestibulospinal tract. Tectospinal tract. Reticulospinal tract. Final common path, motor pool. Reticular formation. Extensive network of neurons that runs through the medulla and projects to thalamic nuclei that influence large areas of the cerebral cortex. Midbrain portion of RAS most likely as its center. Functions as a net or filter for sensory input. Filter out repetitive stimuli, such as allows passage of infrequent or important stimuli to reach the cerebral cortex. Unless inhibited by other brain regions, it activates the cerebral cortex, keeping it alert and awake. How might the sleep centers of your brain work? Why does alcohol make you tired? Reticular formation. Core of brainstem, midbrain, pons and medulla, composed of loosely organized neurons, outside of the major nuclear groups of the brainstem. Medial to lateral, raphe nuclei, gigantocellular region, small cell region. Participate in widespread connections. Rostral continuation of interneuronal network found in spinal cord, dorsal column/medial lemniscal system. Secondary neuron is in brainstem, nucleus gracilis and cuneatus equals dorsal column nuclei. Output of dorsal column nuclei crosses midline and forms recognizable bundle, medial lemniscus. Medial lemniscus fibers synapse in the thalamus in the ventroposterior nuclei. Thalamic axon synapse and primary somatosensory cortex in several somatotopic maps with some segregation of submodalities. http://cas.bellarmine.edu/teaching/human biology/central_nervous_system tracing through the brain stem, dorsal column/medial lemniscal system.